Welcome back to One Stop Law. In this video, we will try to look into the impact of the Russian-Ukraine crisis and Russian-Ukraine war on India, and we will also look to analyze the reasons for which India abstained from voting in the UN Security Council resolution against Russia. So let's go ahead with the video. Now we all know that on Friday, 25th of February 2022, uh, a US sponsored resolution was brought up in United Nations Security Council that deplored in the strongest terms the Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And we had some idea that this resolution was bound to fail because a veto casted against any resolution cannot pass, and Russia, being a permanent member, was expected to cast a veto, and obviously it did. So, out of the 15 permanent members, one Russia did cast a veto. Now, 11 countries actually voted for the resolution, in favor of the resolution. And who were these 11 countries? They were France, USA, UK, Albania, Gabon, Brazil, Ghana, Ireland, Kenya, Mexico, and Norway. But three countries did abstain from voting in this resolution. And out of these three countries, one was India, and the other two being UAE and China. Now, if we look into India's stance on this Russian-Ukraine conflict from the very beginning, we will find that India has never, directly criticized or condemned this Russia's act of aggression. Few days back, when Mr. T.S. Tirumurti, our representative at United Nations, permanent representative of India in United Nations, spoke for the first time on this. To quote him, he said that the escalation of tension along the border of Ukraine with the Russian Federation is a matter of deep concern. So he did say that India is deeply concerned with Russia's act of aggression, but never did he directly say that India condemns such act, or he said that what Russia is doing is utterly wrong. No. Similarly, during this voting at United Nations Security Council on this resolution, which was brought by USA and Albania, India tried to maintain a tough diplomatic balance on the Russian Ukraine war by using strong words on Russian actions. You can see the points I have highlighted in this slide. However, it stopped itself, short of voting against it. It abstained from voting, saying that dialogue is the only answer to settling differences, and India did voice that it regrets that the part of diplomacy in this case has given up. So we can see that India has never, taken a very direct uh, stance against Russia, criticizing its act of aggression against Ukraine. So in this video, basically, we will try to look into the factors, the reasons which kind of, uh, uh, compels India to, rather prevents it from taking a direct uh, condemn a direct act of condemnation against Russia. And we will also try to analyze the impact of this Russian Ukraine conflict on India in our next few slides. So, as you can see, to look into India's interests and concerns in this Russian Ukraine conflict, and to be specific, to look into the impact of this crisis on India, I have divided the reasons into three major heads. The first being immediate concern, the second being a medium term discrete, and the third being the long term concerns. In the next few slides, I will analyze these reasons one by one. Now, the first major concern and the immediate concern for India is, of course, the safety of all the Indians who are now stuck and present in Ukraine. Um, a statistic says that almost 25,000 Indians are now present in Ukraine, out of whom 20,000 are Indian students who are studying in various medical and engineering colleges in Ukraine. And unfortunately, although countries like USA and Ukraine had issued directives to their residents in Ukraine to vacate the country from mid January only, India did not issue any such advisory or directions until very recently. Rather, India issued its first advisory only on 20th February 2022, when it directed the Indian nationals that whoever is staying in Ukraine and whose stay there is not so essential should leave Ukraine temporarily. So this direction came quite lately, and the various videos which we can see now across the television channels of the Indian students, they're running from basement to bunkers in Ukraine. They're horrified with the bombing noise and the bombing of shells and all. The families in staying in India are really worried. So uh, this is a major concern for India to, the safety of the Indians staying in Ukraine. This is the immediate concern, and the act of vacating, the students, bringing back the students and Indians to India has already been initiated, although the action is quite late compared to other countries. The second major concern for India would be, of course, the impact of this war on the trade relations of India with Ukraine and Russia. Specifically with Russia, Russia being the second largest oil producer of the world, it contributes to 13% of global crude oil, and India is no exception to it. India imports a lot of crude oil from Russia. uh, Now, with maximum countries imposing sanction on Russia, now the if the supply chain of this crude oil gets disrupted, then the price of crude oil is bound to rise in the international market. And because if there is a dip in its supply, then its price is bound to rise. And considering the status of India, um, the elections are about to get over by March, and obviously our government is going to raise the price of the petroleum products and gas, because if its price in the international market rises, then obviously the price in India will rise, and not only their price will rise, actually the price of all commodities in India will rise, because petrol and diesel price hike means transportation cost of all products rise automatically, and that has an effect on everyone's pocket in the country, because the supply chain is dependent on this transportation cost. And if petrol and diesel price rises, then price of all goods and commodities are bound to rise, and this is bound to affect or have a huge impact on India as well as other countries. The second trade relation of India is related to Ukraine. In Ukraine, also, uh, India is dependent on Ukraine for a lot of products, like specifically sunflower oil. Okay, India imports, you know, almost 74% of its sunflower oil from Ukraine. So you can understand how much our sunflower oil industry is dependent on Ukraine. At the same time, same goes for polymer for plastic production. India imports this from Ukraine as well. So the thing is, if tomorrow Russia annexes Ukraine, and India do not have a very good term with Russia, then these industries are also bound to suffer, because India has trade relations with Ukraine as well. It imports a lot of things from Ukraine, as well as I told you, crude oil import from Russia is going to play a major factor in India's relationship with Russia, and it has got a tremendous, it has got to affect our economy a lot. Now, coming to the third factor, that is the long term concerns, which is actually the most important one, and these factors are the major ones to have contributed to India's decision of abstaining from voting, or say not taking a direct stance of criticizing Russia's act of aggression, are these four factors. So, the first of all these long term concerns is India's tremendous military dependency on Russia. India is heavily dependent on Russia for its military supplies. There is no doubt about that. A data of data shows that between 2016 to 2020, around 40 to 50, 49 to 50% of India's arm imports are from Russia, and 50 to 80% of India's military equipments are of Russian origin. And not only that, India, it is not only that Russia is selling its arms and equipments to India. Rather, the military relationship between India and Russia has grown a lot during these years, and to the extent that both these countries are now jointly developing and researching on armed supplies. To give you an example, the BrahMos, BRAHMOS, BrahMos cruise missile is a joint venture, between India and Russia, and the name itself originates, from two main rivers of these two countries. Brahmo, the first part, Brah, comes from the river Brahmaputra in India, and the last Mos is comes from the river Moskva from Russia. So these military dependence and the dependence on Russia for military supplies actually is a major concern for India. And moreover, in the meantime, USA has already announced sanction on all the Russian companies which have military ties. So India having military tie with India, it can have direct impact on India as well. So India's military and defense is hugely dependent on Russian supplies. This is one of the major concern. The second factor as part of this long-term concern is the long term friendship between Russia and India. To be very honest, Russia has always stand for India, from time immemorial, rather when India was actually became independent. In fact, in 1955, Russia was the first country to say that Kashmir is an integral part of India, and whatever tension is there between India and Pakistan, it is a bilateral issue between the two countries, and the other parts of the world should not intervene in this matter. Not only that, in 1957, in 1962, and in 1971, the erstwhile Soviet Union was the only country to veto resolutions seeking United Nations intervention in matters of Kashmir. In 1971, when USA had sent the Seventh Fleet to help Pakistan, it was Russia who had sent its nuclear submarine to Indian Ocean to protect India. So, yes, India owes a lot to Russia and its friendship with Russia. Also, similarly, it is said that during Kargil war, Russia and Israel were the two countries who came out to protect India and supplied arms us to fight against Pakistan at the Kargil war. So India owes a lot to Russia and its friendship. So that is also a major concern, because no one wants to break a friendship easily, and this war is going to have an impact on India's friendship with Russia. The third major factor in this long term concern, and this is not the major, this is the biggest factor, that is the ongoing India China border crisis. Now, the tensions between India China border has not got over yet. So, on one hand, India has a lot of military dependence on Russia, and on the other hand, it is also concerned with the growing close, friendly relationship between China and Russia, because if reports are to be believed that China had requested Russia not to go into any war or aggression before the Beijing Olympics get over, because that might interrupt their Olympics. So that is why Russia had chosen a date of 24th February, just after completion of the Beijing Olympics. Moreover, China is Russia's largest trade partner. At the same time, we know that both China and Russia are somehow not it friendly terms with USA and Europe. So both having some common enemy makes always brings them closer. So the last thing, at this time, India would actually want its military supplies become uncertain, if it goes against Russia, and tomorrow there is a Indo-China war. Okay, because Indo-China border crisis is a major concern for India at all time, and it is still there, you know. And at the same time, the reason given for China very recently in this United Nations Security Council voting is also that, first of all, China has condemned US's action, of criticizing or say condemning Russia's act of aggression, because China is the only country which have supported Russia's plea that Russia has not actually done aggression on Ukraine. Rather, it is an act of private defense, because Ukraine had actually, there were security concerns at Russia-Ukraine border, and there were, therefore, whatever Russia is doing is in its act of private defense. And it China is quite convinced with this justification given by Russia, and it is therefore, criticizing USA for its action of bringing such resolution in UN. And on this basis only, China has abstained from voting. So you can see the reasons given by India and China for abstaining from voting in United Nations Security Council is completely different. In India has, at least tried to you know keep its firm words that it is not in favor of aggression, and that violence cannot be answered to anything, and that it regrets that, diplomatic talks failed, and any act of aggression should stop. And then thereafter it abstained from voting. And China has kind of supported Russia's aggression, and has kind of, abstained from voting, stating that Russia has done no wrong. So China must be very pleased. Russia must be very pleased with China, and India won't war. The last thing India can ask for, can dream is, if there is tomorrow any in India China uh, crisis, in Indo-China war, then Russia supporting China, because both are kind of superpowers, and that will be very dangerous for India. And honestly, although I spoke a lot about India's friendship with Russia, yes, Russia has stood for India in number of occasions, but to state to remind you that when it comes to China, Russia has shown or has stood by China, unfortunately. If we look into the 1960 Indo-China war, we can see the then Soviet Union president Nikita Khrushchev. He had openly said that Soviet Union will support its Russian brothers, Chinese brothers, sorry, and not the Indian friends. So India, and not only that, he also delayed, delivery of MiG aircrafts to India during that India-China war. So this is quite a very justified apprehension for India, that if tomorrow there is an Indo-China war and Russia takes the side of China, then it will be very dangerous for India. So India never wants to, lose its whatever you say, its friendship, its benevolent attitude towards Russia, because Indo-China crisis is a major concern for India. Also, we must keep in mind that, the last factor, the perpetual Indo-Pak tensions, the whole world knows about it. We know about it. And the second concern of India is, of course, this, because as we are all aware that amidst this conflict and in Russian Ukraine war, the Pakistan Prime Minister is in his visit to Russia. And if, at this time India takes any wrong stance, like kind of criticizes openly Russia's action or goes against Russia, and tomorrow, again in India Pakistan crisis, where, previously we see that Russia has always stood for India, and tomorrow, if it doesn't happen that Russia goes to the side of Pakistan, Pakistan already has the support of China. It will be, India will become one side in all these things. So these two are major concern. Forget about, even if we can ignore the previous factors, these last 2 points, that is ongoing India China border crisis and the perpetual Indo Pak tensions, where India does require Russia on its side always. So this might be a major factor which have, prevented India from abstaining to vote in even Security Council, and as also, to take a very clear stance against, against this Russian act of aggression. in conclusion, you might ask me that, if India is dependent on Russia, then is not Russia also dependent on India? Because about 25 of Russian exports are to India. So Russia is also heavily dependent on India for its economy, for its trade relations. But it is said that the Russian President Vladimir Putin is kind of a person who is ready to bear any personal hardships to get, if he wants something. Like, look at the situation right now. All the experts around the world have kind of said that if Russia goes into a full scale aggression, at this stage to Ukraine, then whatever happens, might be like Ukraine has to surrender, but Russia is also going to lose a lot of things. Russia is not going to gain anything, but still he has gone for it. So he has ignored all the things. So he is a person who can go to any extent. So at this juncture, if we try to sit and analyze India's stance at this Russian Ukraine crisis, that whether it has done right or wrong by abstaining for voting, or whether it should have voted for the resolution, or whether it should have taken a direct stance by going against Russia, or criticizing or condemning its act of aggression, we may say that yes, we not India may not have been morally correct in abstaining from voting, because we are a democratic country and we should always stand for democracy, because here we see the democracy of a nation being at threat. Ukraine's democracy being at threat. A democratically elected government has been, put into the face of aggression by another country. But if we look at our interest, and if we look at all these factors which I discussed with you, the impact of all these things, when it comes to our national interest point of view, I can say that India didn't have much option but to do what it has done. So that's all for this video. You can share your comments, your views on India's action. What do you feel? Uh, till I see you in the next video, students. Thank you.